A Vietnamese friend asked me about a book written by Carsten Hansen on the Sicilian Dragon, move by move, from Everyman Chess. This book was published in 2016, I think, so kind of 10 years ago. And of course, Carsten Hansen has written a lot of wonderful books. He has written also, I think, with Grandmaster Heine Nielsen, also on the Sicilian Dragon. So I would like to show you, I think, the game number one of that book, so we can discuss and learn more about the Dragon Sicilian, okay? E4, C5 is the Sicilian. In this video, I am going to show you games and also in the next videos from this book, so everyone can appreciate and learn the Sicilian. Of course, if you want the precise detail of the author, you need to buy the book because the comments will be mine. D6 and of course D4. So what is the Sicilian about? The Sicilian is about the fight for the center from the side. Why from the side? Because the idea is that a side pawn is less valuable than a center pawn. If I remember well, there is this FIDE master that maybe is an international master now, that wrote this book on the sniper, and he really made a great example upon the fact that he says, look, a central pawn is like a 125 as a value, and the more you go on the side, the less is the value. So this is like 0.5, and this maybe is a 0.75. So if you are able to exchange this, like we see with this, in reality you have gained something. Now, does it mean that this gain is gonna bring you a victory? Probably not. Why? Because you need to be able to actually convert an advantage into a victory, and that's something that many don't understand. We all want to know the opening, but the opening is just one phase of a game, so we need to become proficient in all the phases, like Magnus does, right? So, and here we finally enter this Sicilian Dragon with a G6 idea. Why I say the G6 idea? Because from the time of the hypermodern, the hypermodern school of thought is the one from obviously Nintsovich, Reti, and of course Alekhine, that they started the idea of trying to control the center from the side, right? Because one thing is to fight in the center with your pawn, but then at a certain time you discover, well, but maybe I can do it also from the side. And so that was kind of very interesting, right? An evolution of thought. And in fact, in this evolution of thought, we can see, and we should see, the world champions. One of the wrong ideas that we have is to try to measure the world champions in strength instead of understanding and chess evolution, okay? In this sense, the idea of starting to fight for the center from the side is a chess evolution, but which world champion realized that or represented that evolution? I'm just talking, guys, because we all want to try to memorize these opening moves, when in reality, maybe if we understand concepts like pawn structure, we don't need to actually memorize stuff, right? And we can play a meaningful game at our level. And for our level, of course, I mean my level of amateur club players, someone who is around 1900, 2000, not someone that is a FIDE master, international master, or grandmaster level, okay? Okay, so here I'm just showing you simple moves of the Sicilian Dragon move by move book written in by Carsten Hansen, and this was the game Dominguez Perez against Smerdon. Smerdon is an Australian GM that is interesting because generally it doesn't open with c5. Smerdon has written a book on the Scandinavian that was very interesting. I don't know if you ever saw it. But also that was unfortunately a kind of long time ago. Okay, so after bishop e2 we have castle, obviously, because when you see the bishop g7, g6, it's because the guy wants to castle on that side. And now, for example, we could have something like this and this, right? Instead, white immediately castle 2 on this side. So this game was played in County Mansisk in 2009. Then there is knight c6, queen d2, and then there is bishop d7. Now the series move by Carsten is based on questions and answers. In this case, there is a question that says, the test move looks rather insipid, doesn't it? Shouldn't the standard Sicilian free move d5 be preferred here? So think about it, guys, because that's the advantage that you have in having someone that makes a video for you, right? Instead of a book. That now I tell you, pause the video and think if this move is good, bad, a possibility or not. And why do I tell you to pause the video? Because I want you to think, because I want you to be able, when you will be in a tournament game, to actually remember this situation and say, should I play this or this, and why? And this is gonna happen only guys, if you put this position on your board, on your chessboard too, while you are watching this game. Because in this way, you watch the game on your computer, phone, or your TV, but you need to have your chessboard in front of you and make the same moves I make, and pause the video when I tell you, because in this way you will learn chess, you will learn this opening, okay? The answer says that while 9d5 is certainly a possibility, black should always keep his eyes open for, in the classical dragon, there is always the risk that massive simplifications will follow as a result of central exchanges, and a stale game might result. This may not be in black's interest if he is playing for a win. And in the book they show us what happens here, okay? Because if you play d5, it says white usually trades the central pawns or keeps the central tension. So we have two possibilities. Keep the central tension means you don't exchange, and so you have to decide for another move. And exchange the central pawn is releasing the tension, okay? So let's see the fourth one. E takes d5, releasing the tension, okay? Obviously follows with knight takes d5, because you cannot take with the queen, otherwise you lose it. And then there is what? What is white playing at this point? At this point, it's given this line, knight takes c6, b takes c6, and rook f d1. And you say, wait a minute, but why rook f d1? I don't understand. What's the difference with this rook? Because when you are a beginner or an amateur, this is the question that comes. Which of the two rooks I'm going to centralize? What does it make? What's the difference? In the book, Grandmaster Hansen did deal with this question and show a line saying that rook a d1 doesn't change anything because it doesn't create any problems for black. Yet I think we want to see this line. Why? Because and this is maybe the reason why you want to study the opening. You want to study the opening because it teaches you some maneuvers and ideas. In this case, there is a thing that happens over and over in Grandmaster games, that is when a rook is placed on a file that is in opposition to a queen, generally the next move a Grandmaster does is always, whoops, to remove the queen from that file. Okay, so this is a thing you will notice, guys, and I try to make you pay attention for that. Then how did this line continue? Because in reality, Grandmaster Hansen has probably chess base when he wrote this book, and what did he do? He got a game that he thought was significant for you that want to learn the Sicilian Dragon, and show you this line. How did it continue? It continued with c takes d5, queen takes d5. At this point you see that there are 3 pawns against 1 in this kind of endgame, but of course they are not going to survive, right? Because if they were going to survive, black has lost the game. Yet, as you can see, the forces are pretty much equal, right? So black plays bishop e6, queen c5, queen takes c5. This would make Magnus happy, because once he has no queens on the board, he thinks that he's going to win the game no matter what. Nobody told him that he cannot win when everything is equal, and he always thinks that if it's equal, he's winning. So that's really funny. As you can see, black has to give up some pawns in the center, but he doesn't care because he wants to destroy this queenside majority that would create a pass pawn and a win for white. So of course you have to do this to avoid to lose the quality, and once white goes back, of course black takes, and here you can see that the situation is equal. Why? Because black has 1 pass pawn, white has 1 pass pawn, equality on this side, right? So the game that is quoted by Grandmaster Carsten is a game played between 2 players, Volkarev and Azarov, in St. Petersburg 2009. And after bishop f3, rook a c8, and bishop takes a7, it seems the players agree to a draw. Why? Because once you take this, how do you actually create something on this side if you are not Magnus? So it seems that Magnus was even able to win a game with this kind of pawn structure that is clearly draw. Now, with that said, let's return back to the position, and I want to tell you another trick that you need to do, okay? We need to memorize, in a sense, or make sense of this position, right? So what do we need to do is to return back to the position itself, the beginning position, and start from there trying to remember the moves. Okay, I put the position back at the start because after a long variation, especially in the beginning moves, I try to remember how to return to that place. And sometimes I fail. So try to ask yourself, and if you remember it, and if you think you remember it, please write it down. Now, there is a system invented, not invented by Chessable, but made available by Chessable, about repeating 3 times this kind of lines. If you do it with their system, you have to pay and find the course and so on. Instead, here, if you have a board in front of you, you can try by yourself. So before I do the next move, you now do the move for black, right? And the move for black would be d6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, right, attacking here. So clearly you need to defend. And then there is the g6 of the dragon, bishop e3. You occupy the diagonal because you open it for that reason. So you need also to give yourself some ideas why you play those moves. Bishop e2, castle, castle. So what's next move for black? Because guys, if you don't remember this, it's a problem, right? So it's nice to see a video. The video tried to teach you something, but you need to put your own. Now the next move is knight c6. And then what's the next move by white? And why white would play that move? You need to give yourself the reason so you understand. Queen d2. What is queen d2 as a move? What is the meaning behind this move? The meaning is that yes, the attack here to remove a defender and then create an attack, but you must remember the 3 tasks of the opening. Obviously, in every opening you need to develop your pieces, right? You need to castle and you need to connect the rooks. In that moment, when you have connected the rooks, you have finished your opening and you enter the middle game, when you need to start to make a plan. Here we stop because we saw this move, bishop d7, but we ask, what if black plays d5? And we saw what happens if white plays e takes d5, right? And then, of course, we saw the main continuation, which was knight takes d5, knight takes e6, b takes e6, and here we saw the line with rook a d1. Now, instead, we see the possible line with rook f d1. Okay? Once more, guys. What do you do here if you're black? I told you before that you will notice, if you see enough Grandmaster games, that once there is a rook on the same file of a queen, Grandmasters tend to move it out. And this is the same moves that if white plays rook a d1 or rook f d1, it's the same move. But now there is a difference. If he played rook a d1, he played knight d5. Instead, here white played bishop d4. Bishop d4 has been marked by the author as a dubious move. And here he says it's very ambitious, as white tries to prove that black's structural pawn weaknesses are more pertinent than his piece activity. But that is hardly the case, following what? e5. Nice move, huh? Bishop c5, rook d8, knight a4, bishop f5, bishop a6, and rook a b8. And here the author of the book, the Sicilian Dragon Move by Move, wrote, black's pieces are wonderfully coordinated, whereas the same can hardly be said about white's pieces, which has been set up to exploit black's perceived weaknesses on the queen side. After c4, which is a mistake, white position collapses rapidly, and black unleashed knight b4, and white cannot prevent material losses. This reminds us of Nan's rule: lose piece, drop off, lose pieces, drop off. White at 2500 rated GM was routed after. Let's see what happens. This is very interesting, right? Queen takes d8, rook takes d8, rook takes d8, queen takes d8, bishop takes b4, bishop c2, b3, e4, rook e1, and bishop d4. And facing unsurmountable threats, he decided to call it a day in a Rizuk against G. Jones. G. Jones is probably Gawain Jones in Plovdiv 2012, so kind of a long time ago. So I think one interesting thing of this position was the following, that let's return for a moment back here. I don't know if I can put the pieces all back together, just be patient, but I think it will interest you guys, because when I was watching the game I didn't immediately understand what was going on, so you have to forgive me. I should have probably blocked the video before. Let's see, tack, 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 this is here, yes. So that's there. So we are in this position, right, if I remember well. And the part I didn't understand, that I hope you also don't understand, is this is considered wrong, no? And here there is this. So I think you probably may ask, why did he play queen takes d8, right? So let's try to play something different. Maybe this move, queen e3, right? What would black do? Because as you can see, there are a lot of possibilities here. So what did black could do? Because obviously black is winning, but what is he doing? I think the move is probably this one. Yes, it's not taking that, but it's this one, I think. And I don't know, play this and this. So this is an advantage. So let's see what happens instead if instead of queen, or instead of knight c2, black takes this. What is the problem here? Why he cannot take that? What could be the reason? Let's say it takes here. So we have black having a material advantage, right? It still has a material advantage, I think. I don't think it's bad. I'm not sure, but I think this is the point. And then there is this. That's the problem. So I cannot really go there. What happens if he does another move, like this one? Why this one would be wrong? Because it doesn't matter. He's still able to play this. So that's why once the pawn a7 fall, there is a problem there. Okay, guys, this was the point, right? Because we were in this position and I didn't immediately understand why white took there instead of moving the queen, right? So that's kind of interesting. And what if he had played something totally different? Just out of curiosity, sorry, just a second. As you can see, I guys can give you this. Now the problem is the Zwischenzug, the intermediate move. If black makes the mistake of taking here, probably white is better. But black will not make that mistake. Black will take here immediately and then take the queen. So I think there is a difference and I can prove it to you by the material, okay? So if you take here, right, there is this move that gives check. And then obviously the queen needs to take. But now white takes back. Now for the engine, this position is still winning for black, okay? So there is not much difference from the other line. I don't know. Again, as you can see, we are just at move 20, and you can see that the number of variation is kind of huge. And this is just a little analysis, not even a complete analysis. This is just one game, so that's why one should buy the book and eventually grind through it, because it's this book is huge by Carsten Hansen. There are maybe 70 games, I don't know how many. You need to watch them all, and just this takes a long time, I think, right? It seems to me that it took a long time. So let's put the position back to what we were analyzing. So really a big analysis here. So let's see if I put everything in order. Yeah. So here the idea was to analyze this rook fd1, as always queen c7, and here there was the start of this wrong line, bishop d4, e5, bishop c5 attacking that, rook d8, and knight a4, bishop f5, and here there was the loss for Gavin Jones, the loss thanks to Gavin Jones. So let's see what else could be done in that position. Okay, so let's return back. Sorry. I'm trying to understand if I showed everything. As you can see, there is a lot of material to study. Okay. Yes, so we saw two things, right? One is taking the pawn, and the other is not giving up the tension. For the moment, we see this, and we saw this move. Instead, there is another possibility, right? Let me see if I can find the other possibility. Yes, the other possibility is, in this case, if you keep the tension, okay? Let's see. And you play rook fd1. In this case, instead of taking and then rook fd1. So notice how long is the line, okay? Black takes on d4, queen takes on d4, but now there is obviously knight takes e4, queen takes d5, and knight d6. Here it says, seems as why if white has some initiative, but black's remaining undeveloped pieces will soon come to life, for example. And here it shows there are also here different moves. One could be this. Let's just go to the main one, queen b3, because otherwise I think the video becomes hours and hours long. I'm not really sure people will watch it all. That's the point. As I'm sure that most people don't even watch these games, all these games in the book, no? Because as you can see, it's a lot of material to study. So how much do you remember? Do you really remember all of this? I don't think so. And here it says, this strong move requiring accurate calculation. So let's see, okay? Here again, there were other possibilities. There was c4, and in the book is shown all the line. Maybe for this reason, one should have books like this on computer, and then maybe watch it on a board, because so you realize that maybe you don't want to learn the dragon. And here it says, is even, and an uneventful draw is very likely to be just around the corner. And notice, if you take recent Grandmaster games such as Kovchan against G. Jones. G. Jones is Gawain Jones, and we find that is already the second game played by Gawain Jones in this line. What does this mean? It means, guys, that you need to have a tool like ChessBase and Megabase 2025 with all the games played, practically more than 10 million, and you look for Gawain Jones and you will find out that he can be your role model. How in ChessBase you would practically put Gawain Jones and then the two moves e4, c5, and say Gawain Jones must be black, and the program ChessBase, I have here the 18, but I know that we are at ChessBase 26, and with that program you can practically get out all the games of Gawain Jones played with the Sicilian. At that point you have this guy that is showing you how to play the Sicilian. So that's why you need to have a role model. So generally I pay attention to the names of recurring players in a certain opening, because they will teach me the opening. No? Okay. Ah, now we have to return back, okay? And there was again the question here at this point, right? We were like here, here, here. Now, if you guys had the time, I would return back to the initial position and start again from there, okay? You need to repeat all the moves over and over and over. If you don't do that, you will not learn it. Now, he played this, and it was played this, but are there other possibilities? He showed this, and I ask you again, is there another possibility? Well, it seems there is, and therefore Carsten Hansen did do his job and try to give you all the possible information, which in my opinion can become a little overwhelming, okay, because already at this point I am totally lost in the variation. So we are just at move 9, just to tell you a thing, and you saw how much you need to know just for d5, right? Now he says a decidedly less commonly seen idea, but worth some consideration, is boom, knight takes d4. Obviously bishop takes d4. You don't get with the queen and get something game on. Bishop d7, a4, bishop c6, bishop f3, a5, and knight d5. Again, the structure of this book by Carsten Hansen is move by move. Obviously, it's not really move by move, but the point is that he asks you some questions in some important moments. Here the question is, should black remove the pesky d5 knight, which is exerting pressure on f6, e7, and b6 squares, because oops, and then jump there. Answer, that is what white is hoping for in such situations. Black usually avoids the d5 exchange as long-term pressure along the e file will result after either bishop takes d5, and let's see what happens. Bishop takes d5, e takes d5, or he says knight takes d5, e takes d5. And this is a fairly standard idea in the Dragon variation, or for that matter in the English opening with the color reverse. Yes, because you must remember that the Sicilian is in reality the English opening, right? c4, e5 with color reverse. So what should black do in this case, instead of taking on d5 and getting the pressure on the e file? Well, it seems, sorry, let's see, it was, let me put it back on this line, I think, yes, we were like this. And this was back. This was here. Okay. So, where is the point? The point is we saw this, and now we see this. Okay. So knight takes d4. bishop takes d4, bishop d7, sorry, this was here, a4, bishop c6, bishop f3, a5, and now after knight d5 black doesn't take there but continue in this way, knight d7. So this is what the author is trying to tell you, right? He's trying to tell you you must not take this knight no matter what, because otherwise the pressure on the file will become a problem. You need to play knight d7, and this is a fairly common idea. He says bishop takes g7, king takes g7, rook e1, rook c8, bishop e2, knight c5, bishop b5, and now there is e5. And here the author gives an evaluation. No? He says the chances are fairly even. Black hands over control of the d5 square and saddles himself with a backwood d6 pawn in order to unbalance the game and possibly seek the kingside initiative. Who were the players? White was Gatakamsky and black was Magnus Carlsen, and they played in Nice, France in 2009. Can you imagine? In 2009. So it was like 16 years ago, 17 years ago. And Carlsen was half his age at that point, right? So he was just a teenager. It would be interesting to know if he was able to win this game or not. Again, I tell you guys, if you are serious about chess, probably you need to buy Chess Base, the Mega Base, and that will give you all the games you need, like this one, okay? So it depends how serious one is. If one is very serious about chess and wants to get a title like FIDE Master, International Master, Grandmaster, yes, you need to have Chess Base. If one wants just to be an amateur and learn the things, no, you don't need that. For being an amateur, you can enjoy your life without that, right? So now that we have answered all the questions and the possible thing, we have to return back again to the position from where we started, okay? So let's put the position back, because I'm pretty sure nobody even remembers how we reach this. And it's kind of confusing. I mean, it's confusing me, but luckily I have all the answer. I cannot imagine how confusing it is for the person who must watch it. Okay, so it was e4, c5, right? Knight f3, d6. Then there was d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4. This is all standard. And now knight f6. After which there is knight c3, g6. And then there is bishop e3, bishop g7, bishop e2, castle, castle, and now there is what? Knight c6. And now white finished the development, queen d2 and bishop d7. So we saw knight d4 and d5. Can you imagine, guys? You have to remember all this stuff. It's crazy, crazy. So bishop d7, and I think we have exhausted a little ourselves. So what is the move after this bishop d7? My God, it's like 2 pages, just the analysis. Okay, the move is rook f d1. And again, guys, you wanted to learn the dragon, right? You need to learn the dragon. Here it says, at this juncture, white has tried several moves which do not trouble black much. Nevertheless, let's take a quick tour through white catalog of ideas. So here there is rec fd1, but there is not only that, there is knight b3, there is f4, so imagine, there is rook a d1, and what else? Wow. So there are these alternatives, f4, this, this, this. Wow. So now you understand why there are more chess moves over the board than atoms in the universe. Honestly, guys, if you want to see this, and this, please buy the book, or I don't know, just go to steal it in a bookshop. No, I don't think, one, that bookshops exist anymore, and that's why I'm laughing, and two, because probably YouTube would close my channel after this suggestion of stealing, but luckily I will try to put this video under the comedy section, so I have the excuse, it was a joke, because probably some people would, apart that, again, I don't think there are bookshops anymore, and they don't keep this book because the book is from 10 years ago, so nobody has it, sorry. So, sorry. Rook fd1 is the move that we are watching, played by Dominguez Perez against Merdon, and that's it. We don't watch any of the other three possibilities, okay? Rook c8, f3, a6, which makes sense, because it takes away a square to these two knights, e4, e4, it's a kind of strong move, because prevents b5, but sometimes can go to a5 and then gain a kind of outpost there, just saying, okay? Now, what would you play if you were black? Grandmaster Merdon played this move, knight e5. But the offer gives another half page of knight a5. So again, I wish someone would buy you a book for Christmas, because it's crazy. This is just one game. And I'm going fast. Knight e5. So what is the move that now is played by white, and why? Why do I ask you a move for white in this position? Because, guys, if you don't understand your opponent's plan and ideas, I'm sorry, you will never win a game. You need constantly ask yourself, why did my opponent do that move? What is the reason behind? If you don't figure it out, and that's why, in a sense, to play blitz endlessly, it's useless, because if you don't figure it out why your opponent plays a certain move, you're wasting your time. Especially when your opponent will play a move that you didn't calculate at all. Here, Dominguez, that is obviously a top player in the world, so a top GM against another GM, played knight d5. And here he says the Cuban Grandmaster offers a knight trade to set up a queenside pawn majority. Okay, so what should black do at this point, right? Notice again that there are other possibilities. That's why to study the Sicilian can be done only if you are 5 years old, because if you are 7, probably you will not have enough time in your life to study the Sicilian. Why? Because here a5 was a move, king h1 was another move that has been played. I mean, again, it's endless. It's endless. And some of these moves have been played against top players, so makes sense to study them. For example, a5 has been played by Kamsky. So you understand that if Kamsky played this move often, Carsten, for example, that played against Kamsky, must have been aware of that. Or maybe not, because this move was played 1 year later, which means Kamsky improved on some of his games. But if you don't have chess base and the mega base, how do you actually follow all this evolution of the opening? That's the part I don't understand, okay? In any case, white played knight d5, and black has two possibilities at least, right? One, it's knight takes d5. The other is e6, and black played e6. He says that to take on d5 in reality is a transposition of a previous line that we watch. So we are lucky that we don't have to watch it again. White played knight takes f6, bishop takes f6, b3, and now what do you think you play as black, if you are black? So you need to pause and find out what is the best black move. Okay, so here black played d5, which is a dubious move. It seems the best move probably was this, knight c6, followed by rook a1, d5, knight takes c6, bishop takes c6, e takes d5, e takes d5, bishop d4, and rook e8. And this leads to equal chances where neither side should expect to be able to generate serious chances of any kind. Instead, black didn't play that, right? He played a different move. What was the move played by black? Let's see, okay? Let's return back. That's all right. Let's see. So I'm trying to put back the position in place. Sometimes it's not so easy because I always forget something. No, we are all okay. Yes. So what's the position? What is the move by black? We saw that this was the best move. Instead, in the game, he played d5. And here it says, black's move attempt to develop active center counterplay. However, there is a flaw in this idea. What is it? And the answer is, so pause the video and try to find what is the flaw in this idea, because the answer is, the problem for black is that it is ill time. It's an ill time break, which allows white to establish a close the center in his favor after the next two moves. So what does I forgot the pawn here. So what does white do? White plays f4, knight c6, and now e5, right? That's the idea of a close center that he was talking about. And here obviously you have to play bishop g7. And the author says the game is beginning to take shape along the lines of a classical French. So this has become a classical French. As you can see, you thought that you were playing the Sicilian Dragon, and in reality you went into a classical French. Why I tell you this? Because once you recognize that the pawn structure is changed and that the opening is different, is not the Sicilian anymore, then you know that you have to do something else. Because generally in the Sicilian you have a certain plan to win the game, but in the French it's different, right? Right. So knight takes c6, bishop takes c6. This is the bad bishop of France. And bishop d4 in anticipation of black's pawn breaks with f7, f6. White readies his bishop to stop black from developing any initiative in the center. Notice that if he's able also to get away a pawn to open the lines, this is not the bad bishop of the French. But after this move, this is the bad bishop of the French, right? So again, I tell you, to know that you transpose from one opening into another is kind of very, very important, right? Okay, so black played f6, e takes f6, bishop takes f6, queen e3, bishop takes d4. And what do you do? How do you retake as white? This is also kind of important. Again, you need to know what your opponent will do. Otherwise, you just have half of the answer. Half of the answer generally doesn't lead you to victory, okay? So here white played rook takes d4. Because as a blocker, this is better than the queen, right? Because this is 5 points, this is 10 nearly. So that could be a reason, right? Here it says black's position is by no means lost, but it lacks potential, thus is subjected to a dreary defensive task. Queen f6, rook e1. So as you can see, this is the backfoot pawn and is already been targeted. King g7. Here the author says it's better for b5, or at least his engine in that time 10 years ago told him that move. I'm a little skeptical of opening books, not because the author didn't do his homework, he did it, but he did it with the tools, which is the software and the hardware of 10 years ago, because the book was from like 2015, 2016. So clearly, guys, you must take every evaluation and everything said in this video with a grain of salt. And it's time to go to sleep for me because I gotta go to work. Bishop d3, rook c e8, so black is still fighting to keep that pawn. G3, king g8. Now, from me, my idea here is the following: that white is better, which means that white must have made a mistake at a certain point if black is going to win or draw. But from what I see, white didn't do any mistake, and white won the game. So the fact that white won the game should be a cautionary tale about the opening, because if a grandmaster like Smerdon cannot draw and goes down, clearly the opening is good, but maybe not so good as we think, right? Because as you can see, this is something that could happen. Here it says, as mentioned before, black is not lost, but all the activity is controlled by white. Black will have to find a setup that limits white's chances to successfully break open the position when it suits him. That, however, is easier said than done. I don't know, clearly with this position, black seems very bad to me. I don't know. I wouldn't want to be black. King f7, h4, and then guys, let's be honest, I'm saying I don't want to be black, but probably against an engine I would lose the game. Also, if this position for me, it's definitely the better for white. Okay. And black played h5. Here he says I would be hesitant to let my pawns get fixed on the light squares in this fashion. Note that now only white can break open the king side with g3 and g4 at the appropriate juncture. Yeah. So king f2, king f6, king e3, e5. I think at this point white is trying to put black in zugzwang. You say, but zugzwang is a kind of term that exists only in the endgame. No, if you see some of the Fischer games, and that's why we should watch the world champions as a role model, in some of those games he would show you how he put already in zugzwang the opponent in the middle game, and so when it entered the endgame was already lost. Also if material was equal, like here. Here the material is equal, right? 3, 6 pawns, 2, 4, 6, 1 bishop each, and 2 rooks. So material is equal, but black is gonna win. Or not. No, sorry, black is not gonna win, it's white, because white has the most active position. So c3 and rook b8. Here it says not a bad idea attempting active counterplay with b7, b5. But obviously white isn't that accommodating. So it means that white understood that black could play that move and ask himself why. Because he wants to play b5. So what is the neutralization of b5? It's c4. And here he says a well-timed hit. Nipping black b7, b5 plan in the bud. Moreover, black cannot trade pawns with d takes c4, because after bishop takes c4, the e6 pawn will be irreversibly weakened, he says. So b6, and you see the problem is once you finish to move the pawns, what do? C takes d5, bishop takes d5, and now is bishop c4. Obviously, guys, there was also an alternative that was before, but it seems it doesn't work. So bishop c4, bishop takes c4, b takes c4, rook f d8, and rook b5. Rook takes d4, king takes d4. You see, the problem is this rook that prevents that king from advancing. So rook d8, and king c3. Now guys, this is a rook endgame, and this is why you need to study the endgame. So you see, all this study of the opening didn't prepare you for this, right? Rook d6, c5, b takes c5, rook takes c5, and here rook d1, which is a blunder. What was the right move in this endgame? This is a good exercise that you can do at home, and you should do it. You should do it. Why? Because before the games were played with adjournments. At this point they would adjourn, and you would have a night to study the position and find the best move. With the introduction of engines that were quite stronger than us, they couldn't do this. And so, how do you find the right move here? It seems the right move is rook d5, but black played rook d1. And so it's gone, practically, the chance to... of course, in the book there is a big analysis of why rook d5 is the right move, is the move that allows black to draw or not lose at least. But unfortunately, rook d1 does lose. Why? Rook takes e5, rook a1, king b2, rook g1, rook g5, king rook g2. As you can see now, there is an even bigger problem. This rook has blocked that, but this will not be able to stop that, so it's kind of problem. Tack, 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 and tack. And here black resigned. Why did black resign? Let's say that black does this to try to stop that pawn, right? And let me show you here so I can take count. This check. And white play this, sorry. Now, what does black do here? He can give check, right? But white will do what? He will block. And once black takes, let's say, take is not the best move, probably the best move is something like this to resist, but let's say black takes, king takes, right? So after king takes, the other thing is this, but it doesn't go fast enough because there is this, right? So that's the problem and why black resigned. As we can see, if we would have just watched the game very, very fast, we wouldn't even know what was the mistake that led to this loss. The mistake probably was this rook d5 instead of rook d1 that lost the entire game. So the mistake was made in the endgame, not in the opening. Also, if black didn't come out particularly super active and with a great advantage from the opening. Maybe that's the reason why the dragon is not used much, because as you can see, it's easy to lose. Thank you very much for watching the video, and I will try to unite this video to the previous one, so we have just game one all in one video. And unfortunately, as you can see, it's more than 1 hour. I'm sorry, I don't know what to do, but and this doesn't even show all the variation that were put in the game in that time. Thank you for watching.